The house was buzzing with excitement, and the scent of homemade lasagna filled the air. It was Noah's 35th birthday, and I wanted everything to be perfect. Friends and family mingled, laughter echoed through the rooms, and our son, Charles, was happily playing with his new toy car, racing it around the legs of our guests. I was in the kitchen, putting the finishing touches on the birthday cake, a triple-layer chocolate masterpiece that I knew was Noah's favorite. Just as I was about to bring it out, I heard Noah's voice calling from the living room. "Amelia, can you come here for a second?" There was something off in his tone. I wiped my hands on a towel, trying to shake off the sudden unease that settled in my stomach. I walked into the living room, still holding the towel, and found Noah standing in the middle of the room, holding a piece of paper. His face was pale, his eyes hard and cold. "What's up?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light. "Is everything okay?" Noah didn't answer immediately. He just stared at me, his knuckles white from gripping the paper so tightly. The guests around us started to sense something was wrong, their conversations quieting down. "I got a DNA test done," Noah finally said, his voice strained. "It says Charles isn't my biological son." The words hit me like a physical blow. I felt the air leave my lungs, my vision narrowing to just Noah and that damned piece of paper. I forced a laugh, though it sounded shaky and nervous even to my own ears. "Noah, come on. This has to be some kind of joke, right? Charles is our son. We went through IVF, remember? There's no way he's not yours." Noah's jaw tightened. "It's not a joke, Amelia. This paper says there's zero chance I'm Charles's father." "Explain that." I blinked, trying to process what he was saying. This didn't make any sense. There must be a mistake, I insisted. Lab errors happen all the time. They must have mixed up the samples or something. Noah shook his head, his eyes flashing with anger and hurt. "Or maybe you're hiding something from me." A cold chill ran down my spine. "Noah, how can you even think that? You know I would never." He cut me off, his voice rising. "I don't know what to think anymore, Amelia. This paper says it all." I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes. "Noah, please, you know me. You know I would never betray you like that. Charles is our son. There has to be another explanation." He looked at me for a long moment, the room eerily quiet around us. Then he turned and walked away, heading for the back door. "I need some time to think," he said over his shoulder, leaving me standing there, my heart in pieces. As the door closed behind him, I realized everyone was staring at me. I took a deep breath, trying to pull myself together. Evelyn, Noah's mother, approached me, her face etched with concern. "Amelia, is everything all right?" she asked softly. I forced a smile, though it felt like my face might crack from the effort. "Yes, just a bit overwhelmed with everything. It's been a long day." Evelyn nodded, but I could see the doubt in her eyes. "If you need to talk, I'm here." "Thank you," I said, grateful for her support, but not ready to share the burden of what had just happened. I couldn't let anyone see how deeply this was affecting me. Not yet. As I walked back to the kitchen, my mind raced. There had to be an explanation. There had to be a way to fix this. For now, I had to focus on the party and keeping things together for Charles and our guests. But I knew that nothing would ever be the same until Noah and I found a way through this nightmare. After Noah stormed out, I stood in the kitchen, my mind racing. I had to pull myself together. This was Noah's birthday, and I couldn't let his irrational doubts ruin everything. I forced myself to take a few deep breaths and focus on the task at hand. The cake still needed to be served. I returned to the living room, the cake balanced carefully on my hands. The chatter had resumed, albeit with an undercurrent of unease. I smiled at the guests, doing my best to mask my inner turmoil. "All right, everyone, time for cake," I announced, trying to inject some cheer into my voice. The guests gathered around, and for a moment the mood lightened. Charles clapped his hands excitedly, his eyes wide with anticipation. I lit the candles and we all sang happy birthday to Noah, even though he was conspicuously absent. As the candles flickered, I wished for clarity and for Noah to come to his senses. I blew out the candles on his behalf, and the guests cheered. For a few minutes, the normalcy of the celebration returned, but my mind was still churning with confusion and hurt. After the cake was cut and served, I slipped away to find Noah. He was standing on the back porch, staring out into the yard. His posture was rigid, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. "Noah," I said softly as I stepped outside. He didn't turn around. "What do you want, Amelia?" I took a deep breath. "We need to talk about this. That test has to be wrong. There's no other explanation." He finally turned to face me, his eyes cold and distant. "Why are you so sure, Amelia? How can you be so damn sure?" "Because I know what happened," I replied, my voice rising in frustration. "We went through IVF, Noah. We both know there were no other men. There can't be any doubt." "Then how do you explain this?" he demanded, holding up the crumpled test result. "I can't," I said, my voice breaking. "But I know it's a mistake. Lab errors happen. Maybe they mixed up the samples. We need to get it checked again." Noah shook his head, a bitter laugh escaping his lips. "You think this is just some simple mix-up? This is our son we're talking about, our family." I stepped closer, reaching out to touch his arm. He flinched but didn't pull away. "Noah, please. You know me. You know I would never do anything to hurt you or our family. We have to trust each other." His eyes softened for a moment, but then the hardness returned. "How can I trust you when this paper says otherwise?" I felt tears welling up again. "Because you know me," I whispered. "Because you love me. Because we've built a life together." He looked away, his jaw clenched. "I need some time to think," he repeated, his voice strained. I swallowed hard, fighting back the tears. "All right," I said softly, "but we need to figure this out. For Charles. For us." Noah nodded, but his eyes were distant. "I'll be inside in a minute." I turned and walked back into the house, my heart heavy. This wasn't the way things were supposed to be. We were supposed to be celebrating, not questioning the very foundation of our family. I glanced back at Noah, still standing on the porch, and hoped with all my heart that we could find a way through this storm. As I re-entered the living room, I saw Evelyn watching me, concern etched on her face. I gave her a reassuring smile, but I knew she wasn't convinced. I wasn't convinced myself. I returned to the guests, trying to engage in small talk and keep the mood light, but the tension lingered, and I couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to unravel. After what felt like an eternity, Noah finally came back inside. He didn't look at me, but he joined the guests, putting on a brave face. I knew we had a long road ahead, but for now I had to focus on holding things together for Charles and everyone else. The evening dragged on, and as the guests slowly trickled out, I felt the weight of the situation pressing down on me. I hoped that once we were alone, Noah and I could start to rebuild the trust that had been so violently shaken. When the last guest left, I closed the door and turned to Noah. "We need to talk," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He nodded, his expression unreadable. "Yeah, we do." We sat down in the living room, the silence heavy between us. I didn't know how to begin, but I knew we had to start somewhere. "Noah, I'm sorry for how this has made you feel," I began, "but I need you to believe me. Charles is our son. We need to get another test, go back to the clinic, whatever it takes." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know, Amelia. This has thrown everything I thought I knew into question." "I understand," I said softly. "But please, let's work through this together." He looked at me, his eyes filled with a mixture of pain and uncertainty. "All right," he said finally. "We'll figure this out, but it's going to take time." I nodded, relief washing over me. "We'll get through this, Noah. We have to." As we sat there, the enormity of the situation still hanging over us, I held on to the hope that our love and determination would see us through. It was the only way forward. The evening was over, and the guests had finally left. The house, once filled with laughter and joy, now seemed eerily quiet. I was cleaning up the kitchen, my movements mechanical. I could hear Noah in the living room, the sound of his pacing adding to the tension in the air. I felt a knot in my stomach, the weight of our earlier confrontation pressing down on me. I wiped down the counter for the third time, trying to keep my hands busy and my mind off the turmoil that was tearing me apart inside. I couldn't avoid this conversation any longer. I took a deep breath and walked into the living room. Noah was standing by the window, staring out into the dark yard. "Noah," I said softly, "we need to talk." He turned to face me, his eyes filled with a mixture of anger, hurt, and confusion. "Talk about what, Amelia? The fact that you've been lying to me." I flinched at his words. "I haven't been lying to you, Noah. There has to be a mistake. Charles is our son." "How can you be so sure?" he demanded, his voice rising. "How can you stand there and tell me there's a mistake when this test says otherwise?" "Because I know," I insisted, tears welling up in my eyes. "I know what happened. We went through IVF together. There was no one else. You have to believe me." He shook his head, his expression one of disbelief. "I don't know what to believe anymore. You say there's a mistake, but this paper says something completely different." I took a step closer, my voice trembling. "Noah, please. Think about it. We were both there for every appointment, every procedure. We wanted this so badly. You know I would never betray you." His eyes softened for a moment, and I saw a flicker of the man I loved. But then the hardness returned. "But what if you did? What if something happened that you didn't tell me about?" I felt a sob rise in my throat. "Noah, nothing happened. I swear. I love you and only you. Please, let's get another test. Talk to the clinic, anything. But don't let this destroy us." He ran a hand through his hair, his frustration evident. "I need time, Amelia. This is too much. I can't just pretend this isn't happening." I nodded, tears streaming down my face. "I understand. Take the time you need. But please remember that I love you, and that we're a family. We'll figure this out together." He didn't respond, just turned back to the window. I felt a crushing sense of helplessness, not knowing how to reach him. I decided to give him the space he needed and headed upstairs to check on Charles. When I peeked into his room, he was sound asleep, clutching his favorite stuffed animal. I sat on the edge of his bed, gently smoothing his hair. He looked so peaceful, so innocent. My heart ached at the thought of what this was doing to our family. I whispered a silent promise to him. "We'll fix this, Charlie. I promise." As I left his room, I heard Noah coming up the stairs. I waited for him in the hallway, hoping he would say something, anything, to reassure me that we would be okay. But he walked past me without a word, heading into the guest room and closing the door behind him. I stood there for a moment, staring at the closed door. The pain and confusion were almost too much to bear. I wanted to scream, to cry, to do something to release the turmoil inside me. But I knew I had to stay strong for Charles, for our family. I went to our bedroom, feeling more alone than I ever had. I sat on the edge of the bed, my mind racing. How could everything fall apart so quickly? Just a few hours ago we were celebrating Noah's birthday, and now it felt like our entire world was crumbling. I lay down, staring at the ceiling, the events of the day replaying in my mind. I tried to hold on to the hope that we would get through this, but the doubt and fear were overwhelming. The tears came again, and this time I didn't try to stop them. I cried until there were no more tears left, exhaustion finally pulling me into a restless sleep. The next morning, I woke up with swollen eyes and a heavy heart. I went through the motions of getting ready, trying to keep things as normal as possible for Charles. When I went downstairs, Noah was already in the kitchen, making breakfast for Charles. "Good morning," I said quietly, trying to gauge his mood. He nodded, not meeting my eyes. "Morning." Charles ran up to me, hugging my leg. "Mummy, can we go to the park today?" I forced a smile. "Sure, sweetie. We can go after breakfast." As we sat down to eat, the tension between Noah and me was palpable. Charles chattered away, oblivious to the strain. I looked at Noah, hoping to see some sign that he was ready to talk, to start mending the rift between us. But his expression remained distant. After breakfast, I took Charles to the park, hoping the fresh air would clear my head. As he played on the swings, I sat on a bench, my thoughts a whirlwind of confusion and hurt. How could one test cause so much damage? I knew we needed to get to the bottom of this, but I didn't know where to start. When we returned home, Noah was gone. He had left a note saying he needed some time to think and would be back later. I felt a pang of worry but knew I had to give him the space he needed. The rest of the day passed in a blur. I tried to keep busy, cleaning the house and playing with Charles, but my mind kept drifting back to the conversation with Noah, the hurt in his eyes, and the doubt that had crept into our lives. That night, as I put Charles to bed, he looked up at me with his big, innocent eyes. "Mummy, is Daddy mad at us?" I felt my heart break a little more. "No, sweetie. Daddy just needs some time to think. Everything will be okay." He nodded, seeming to accept my answer. I kissed him goodnight and went back to my room, feeling the weight of the world on my shoulders. I didn't know how we would get through this, but I knew we had to try. For Charles, for our family, for the love that still connected us. As I lay in bed, I whispered a silent prayer. Please let us find our way back to each other, and with that hope, however fragile, I drifted off to sleep, holding on to the belief that love would guide us through the storm. The days after Noah's bombshell revelation were tense. The house felt different, as if a heavy cloud hung over it. I went about my daily routines, but everything seemed off-kilter. Noah stayed mostly silent, absorbed in his own thoughts. We spoke in brief exchanges, but the warmth and ease that once characterized our relationship were gone. One evening, a few days after the party, Noah's mother, Evelyn, invited us over for dinner. She had always been a pillar of support in our lives, and I hoped that spending time with her might help bridge the gap that had formed between Noah and me. We arrived at Evelyn's house, greeted by the comforting smell of her famous roast chicken. Charles ran ahead, excited to see his grandmother. Grandma. Look what I made in school today." Charles waved a colourful drawing. Evelyn beamed, taking the picture from him. "Oh, that's beautiful, sweetheart. You're quite the artist." Noah and I followed Charles into the kitchen, where Evelyn was setting the table. She glanced at us, her eyes flickering with concern. "How are you both doing?" she asked, her voice gentle. I forced a smile. "We're managing, just trying to take things one day at a time." Noah nodded but didn't say anything. Evelyn gave him a knowing look but didn't press further. She turned her attention to Charles, who was babbling excitedly about his day. "Why don't you show me your drawing in the living room?" Evelyn suggested, giving Noah and me a moment alone. As they left, I turned to Noah. "We need to talk, Noah. We can't keep avoiding this." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I know, Amelia. It's hard to know where to start." "Let's start by agreeing to get another test done," I said. "We need to clear this up once and for all." Noah nodded slowly. "All right, we'll get another test. But what if it says the same thing?" "Then we'll figure it out together," I said firmly. "We'll talk to the clinic, find out what went wrong. But we can't let this tear us apart." Noah looked at me, his eyes softening. "I don't want to lose you, Amelia. I'm just so scared." I stepped closer, reaching out to touch his arm. "We won't lose each other. We'll get through this. We have to." Evelyn returned with Charles, breaking the moment. "Dinner's ready," she announced, giving us a small smile. "Let's sit down and enjoy the meal." We gathered around the table, the familiar comfort of Evelyn's home easing some of the tension. As we ate, Evelyn kept the conversation light, asking Charles about school and sharing stories from her day. I was grateful for her efforts to create a semblance of normalcy. After dinner, Evelyn pulled me aside while Noah and Charles played in the living room. "Amelia, what's going on between you two? I can see something's wrong." I sighed, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on me. "Noah, He got a DNA test done. It says Charles isn't his son. Evelyn's eyes widened in shock. What? That can't be right. Charles is your son. I know you both went through so much to have him. I know, I said, my voice breaking. But the test says otherwise. Noah doesn't believe it could be a mistake. He's so hurt and confused. Evelyn placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. Oh, Amelia, this must be so hard for both of you. But you have to stay strong. Get another test. Talk to the clinic. You'll find a way to fix this. I nodded, tears welling up. Thank you, Evelyn. I just hope Noah and I can get through this. You will, she said firmly. You're both strong, and you love each other. That's what matters. We rejoined Noah and Charles, who were now building a Lego tower on the living room floor. Watching them, I felt a flicker of hope. We had to get through this, for Charles's sake and for ours. As we prepared to leave, Evelyn hugged us both tightly. Remember, I'm here for you. Whatever you need, don't hesitate to ask. Thank you, Mum, Noah said, his voice softening for the first time in days. Driving home, the silence between Noah and me felt a bit less oppressive. We had a plan now, a way to start rebuilding the trust that had been shattered. I glanced at him, catching his eye for a moment, and saw a glimmer of the man I loved. When we got home and put Charles to bed, Noah and I sat down in the living room. The weight of our situation still hung over us, but there was a sense of determination too. We'll call the clinic first thing in the morning, Noah said. We'll get this sorted out. Yes, I agreed. We'll get another test, and we'll get through this together. As we sat there, side by side, I felt a flicker of hope. It wouldn't be easy, but we had taken the first step, and with Evelyn's support, I knew we had a chance to find our way back to each other. We went to bed that night, still facing the uncertainty of our situation, but for the first time in days, I felt a glimmer of hope. We had a plan, and we were going to face this together. That was all we could do, one step at a time, with love and determination guiding us through. The next morning, Noah and I called the clinic together. I could see the tension in his shoulders as he explained the situation to the receptionist. They scheduled us for a meeting with the head doctor the following day. After the call, Noah and I sat in silence for a while, the enormity of our situation pressing down on us. As I went about my day, I couldn't stop thinking about everything that had happened. I replayed our conversations over and over in my head, wondering what I could have said or done differently. The doubt and fear gnawed at me, and I felt like I was losing my grip on reality. That afternoon, while Charles was at school, I found myself alone in the house. I wandered from room to room, my thoughts a chaotic swirl. How could something like this happen to us? We had been so happy, so certain of our future. Now, everything felt uncertain and fragile. I ended up in Charles's room, sitting on his bed and holding his favorite stuffed animal. The familiar scent of his shampoo and the sight of his toys scattered around the room brought tears to my eyes. I loved Charles with all my heart, and the thought of anything threatening our family was unbearable. The door creaked open, and Noah stepped inside. He saw me sitting there, tears streaming down my face, and his expression softened. He came over and sat next to me, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. "I'm sorry, Amelia," he said quietly. "I know this is hard on you too." I leaned into him, grateful for the comfort. "I just don't understand how this could happen, Noah. We've been through so much together. We wanted Charles so badly." "I know," he replied, his voice thick with emotion. "I keep thinking the same thing. But we have to get to the bottom of this, for Charles's sake, and for us." We sat there in silence for a while, holding on to each other. The uncertainty and fear were still there, but being together made it a little easier to bear. The next day we went to the clinic. The waiting room was filled with couples and individuals, all hoping for their own miracles. It brought back memories of our own journey, the hope and anticipation we had felt each time we came here. Dr. Matthews, the head doctor, greeted us with a warm smile. "Noah, Amelia, it's good to see you. I understand you've been having some concerns about your recent DNA test." "Yes," Noah said, his voice steady. "We got a test done, and it says that I'm not Charles's biological father. We need to understand how this could happen. Doctor. Matthews nodded, her expression serious. I understand your concern. Let's go over everything step by step and see if we can figure out what happened. She led us to her office and pulled up our records on her computer. We went through the entire process, from our initial consultations to the IVF procedures. Doctor. Matthews explained every step in detail, and it became clear that there was no obvious mistake. Everything seems to be in order, she said, frowning. The samples were correctly labelled and handled. There's no indication of a mix-up on our end. Noah and I exchanged a worried glance. So what does that mean? I asked, my voice trembling. Are you saying the test was right? Doctor. Matthews shook her head. Not necessarily. Lab errors can happen, though they are rare. I recommend getting another DNA test done, just to be sure. We can arrange that for you here. We agreed, and Dr. Matthews took new samples from both Noah and Charles. She assured us that the results would be expedited, and we would have answers within a few days. As we left the clinic, the weight of uncertainty still hung over us. We tried to distract ourselves by taking Charles to the park and spending time together as a family, but the worry was always there, just beneath the surface. That night, as we lay in bed, I turned to Noah. What if the new test says the same thing? What will we do then? Noah sighed, staring up at the ceiling. I don't know, Amelia. I honestly don't know. But we'll face it together whatever happens. I nodded, reaching out to hold his hand. I love you, Noah. No matter what, we'll get through this. He squeezed my hand, his eyes meeting mine. I love you too. And you're right. We'll get through this, one way or another. The next few days were a blur of anxiety and waiting. I threw myself into taking care of Charles and trying to keep things as normal as possible, but the tension was always there. Every time the phone rang, my heart would leap, hoping it was the clinic with the results. Finally, the call came. Dr. Matthews's calm voice on the other end of the line brought both relief and dread. Amelia, Noah, we've received the results of the new test. Could you come in tomorrow to discuss them? I agreed, my voice shaking. After I hung up, I turned to Noah. The results are in. We need to go to the clinic tomorrow. Noah nodded, his face pale. Okay, we'll face it together. That night, sleep was elusive. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing with possibilities. I tried to stay hopeful, but the fear of what the results might reveal was overwhelming. The next day, we went back to the clinic. Dr. Matthews greeted us with a serious expression. Please, have a seat. We sat down, our hands tightly clasped together. Dr. Matthews opened a file and looked at us. The results of the new test confirm the findings of the previous one. Noah, you are not Charles's biological father. I felt like the ground had been pulled out from under me. I looked at Noah, his face a mask of shock and pain. But how I whispered, how is that possible? Doctor. Matthews sighed. I can't explain it. The chances of this happening are incredibly low, but it appears there was a mix-up at some point. I'm so sorry. Noah and I sat there, the weight of the revelation crushing us. We had come seeking answers, but instead we were left with even more questions. As we left the clinic, Noah turned to me, his eyes filled with determination. We need to find out what happened, Amelia. We need to get to the bottom of this. I nodded, tears streaming down my face. Yes, we do. For Charles and for us. We drove home in silence, each lost in our own thoughts. The path ahead was uncertain, but I knew we had to face it together. Our love had been tested in ways we never imagined, but it was still there, a beacon of hope in the midst of the storm. As we pulled into our driveway, I took Noah's hand. We'll get through this, Noah. We'll find the truth, and we'll get through this together. He squeezed my hand, his eyes filled with a mix of pain and resolve. Yes, we will. Together. The tension in the house was palpable after our visit to the clinic. We were still reeling from the confirmation that Noah was not Charles's biological father. Questions swirled in my mind. How did this happen? Who was responsible? And most importantly, how were we going to move forward? A few days later, as I was tidying up the living room, my phone buzzed with a message from Benjamin, a close family friend. He had heard about our situation from Noah and suggested we all meet up for a picnic at the park. Benjamin was like a big brother to Noah, and his presence always seemed to bring a sense of calm. "Hey, Noah," I called out, walking into the kitchen where he was making sandwiches for lunch. "Ben just texted. He wants us to meet up at the park for a picnic. What do you think?" Noah paused, a thoughtful look on his face. "That sounds like a good idea. It might be nice to get out of the house and have some fresh air." I smiled, feeling a glimmer of relief. "Great, I'll pack some snacks and grab the blanket." A short while later, we arrived at the park. The sun was shining, and a gentle breeze rustled the leaves of the tall oak trees. Charles ran ahead, his laughter echoing as he chased after a butterfly. For a moment, the weight of our troubles lifted, replaced by the simple joy of watching our son play. Benjamin was waiting for us at a picnic table near the playground. He waved as we approached, a warm smile on his face. "Hey guys, glad you could make it." We greeted him, and he pulled me into a bear hug. "How are you holding up?" Amelia asked, concern in his eyes. I shrugged, trying to muster a smile. "We're managing. It's been a lot to process." Benjamin nodded, his expression understanding. "I can imagine. But remember, you have friends who care about you. We're here for you, no matter what." We settled down on the blanket, spreading out the food. Benjamin's presence was a welcome distraction, and his easygoing nature helped lighten the mood. We chatted about everything and nothing, avoiding the elephant in the room for a while. Charles ran over, his cheeks flushed with excitement. "Mummy, Daddy, can I go play on the swings?" I glanced at Noah, who smiled and nodded. "Sure, buddy. Just be careful." As Charles ran off, Benjamin turned to us, his expression serious. "Noah told me about the DNA test. I can't imagine what you're going through, but I want you to know I'm here for you. Whatever you need, just say the word." Noah sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Thanks, Ben. It's been really tough. We don't know what to do next." "Have you thought about getting a lawyer?" Benjamin suggested. "If there was a mix-up at the clinic, you might need legal help to get to the bottom of it." I nodded, the thought already having crossed my mind. "That's a good idea. We need to find out what happened and make sure it doesn't happen to anyone else." Benjamin leaned back, looking thoughtful. "I'll ask around, see if I can find someone reputable for you. In the meantime, try to take care of yourselves. This is a marathon, not a sprint." We sat in companionable silence for a while, watching Charles play. The sun was beginning to set, casting a warm glow over the park. For the first time in days, I felt a sense of peace. Being outside, surrounded by nature and the people we cared about, was a welcome respite from the constant worry. As we packed up our picnic and prepared to leave, Benjamin pulled Noah aside for a private word. I watched them from a distance, hoping that whatever Benjamin was saying would help Noah find some clarity and strength. When they rejoined us, Noah's expression was more relaxed than it had been in days. "Thanks, Ben." "I appreciate it," he said, clapping his friend on the shoulder. "Any time, bro," Benjamin replied with a grin. "Remember, you're not alone in this." We said our goodbyes and headed home, the car ride filled with Charles's chatter about his adventures at the park. As we pulled into our driveway, I reached over and squeezed Noah's hand. "That was really nice," I said softly. "We needed that." Noah nodded, a small smile playing on his lips. "Yeah, we did. Thanks for suggesting it." Inside the house, the familiar comfort of our home welcomed us. The evening passed quietly, with Charles falling asleep almost as soon as his head hit the pillow. Noah and I sat on the couch, the TV playing softly in the background. "I talked to Ben about getting a lawyer," Noah said, breaking the silence. "He knows someone who might be able to help us." I nodded, feeling a sense of relief. That's good. We need to find out what happened and make sure it never happens again. Noah turned to me, his eyes filled with determination. We'll get through this, Amelia, one step at a time. I leaned against him, feeling the warmth of his body and the steady beat of his heart. I know we will. Together. As we sat there, wrapped in each other's arms, I felt a flicker of hope. The road ahead was still uncertain, but for now we had found a moment of peace. And in that moment, I believed we could face whatever challenges lay ahead. The days following our moment of respite at the park were a mix of highs and lows. There were moments of quiet normalcy, like making breakfast or helping Charles with his homework, but there was also the constant undercurrent of tension and uncertainty. We were still waiting to hear back from the lawyer Benjamin had recommended, and the waiting was taking its toll on both Noah and me. One evening, after a particularly long day at work, I came home to find Noah sitting on the couch, staring blankly at the television. Charles was playing with his Legos on the floor, his face lit up with concentration. "Hey," I said, setting my bag down and kicking off my shoes. "How was your day?" Noah looked up, his eyes tired, same as usual, just trying to keep busy. I nodded, understanding the struggle. "Where's Charles?" "He's been in his room, building some sort of Lego city," Noah said, a hint of a smile on his lips. "He said he's making a place where everyone can be happy." My heart swelled with love for our son. He had a way of finding joy and creativity even in the midst of chaos. "I'm going to go check on him." I walked down the hall and gently knocked on Charles's door. "Hey, buddy, can I come in?" "Sure, Mummy," came his excited reply. I opened the door to find Charles surrounded by an impressive array of Lego structures. He looked up at me with a big grin. "Look, Mummy, I made a whole city." I sat down next to him, marveling at his creations. "Wow, Charles, this is amazing. You've got buildings and roads and everything." He beamed with pride. "Thanks, Mummy. I made it so everyone can be happy and live together." My eyes welled up with tears at his innocence and pure heart. I pulled him into a hug, holding him tightly. "I love you so much, Charles. You know that, right?" He hugged me back, his small arms wrapped around my neck. "I love you too, Mummy. Are you okay?" I pulled back slightly, looking into his eyes. "I'm okay, sweetie. Just a little tired. How about you? How was your day?" "It was fun. I played with Daddy and built my city. Can we read a story tonight, Mummy?" "Of course," I said, smiling through my tears. "Which one do you want to read?" "Can we read Goodnight Moon?" he asked, his eyes shining with excitement. "Absolutely," I replied. "Let's get you ready for bed, and then we'll read." We went through the bedtime routine, brushing teeth and changing into pajamas. As we settled into his bed with the book, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. Reading to Charles, being close to him, was a reminder of what truly mattered. I opened the book and began to read, my voice soft and soothing. In the great green room, there was a telephone and a red balloon. Charles snuggled closer, his head resting on my shoulder. As I read, I felt the weight of the past few weeks lift slightly. This was a moment of pure, unfiltered love, a reminder of the bond we shared. When I finished the book, Charles was nearly asleep. I kissed his forehead and whispered, "Good night, my sweet boy. I love you." "I love you too, Mummy," he murmured, his eyes closing. I quietly left his room, closing the door behind me. As I walked back to the living room, I found Noah still sitting on the couch, his expression thoughtful. "He's asleep," I said, sitting down next to him. Noah nodded, his eyes meeting mine. "I overheard you reading to him. He's lucky to have you, Amelia." "We're lucky to have him," I replied, taking Noah's hand. "He's our little miracle." Noah squeezed my hand, his eyes filled with emotion. "I know, and I promise, no matter what happens, we'll always protect him. We'll always be his parents." I leaned against him, feeling the warmth of his love and the strength of our bond. We'll get through this, Noah. For Charles and for us. The next morning, as I was making breakfast, Charles came into the kitchen, still rubbing sleep from his eyes. "Mummy, can we go to the park again today?" I smiled, ruffling his hair. "Sure, sweetheart. Let's have breakfast first and then we'll head out." Noah joined us at the table and we ate together, the simple act of sharing a meal bringing a sense of normalcy. After breakfast, we packed a picnic and headed to the park. The sun was shining and the air was filled with the sounds of children playing and birds singing. Charles ran ahead, his laughter echoing through the park. Noah and I walked hand in hand, watching our son with a mix of pride and love. As we sat down on a blanket, I pulled out a book and began to read while Noah and Charles played a game of catch. The sight of them together, laughing and enjoying the moment, filled my heart with joy. After a while, Charles came over and plopped down next to me. "Mummy, can we have lunch now?" "Of course," I said, pulling out the sandwiches and snacks we had packed. "Let's eat." We enjoyed our picnic. The simple pleasure of being together easing some of the tension that had been weighing us down. As we finished eating, Charles lay back on the blanket, looking up at the sky. "Look, Mummy, that cloud looks like a dragon," he exclaimed, pointing up. I lay down next to him, following his gaze. "You're right, it does. And that one over there looks like a sailboat." We spent the next hour cloud gazing and making up stories about the shapes we saw. It was a moment of pure, unfiltered joy, a reminder of the simple pleasures in life. As the afternoon turned into evening, we packed up and headed home. Charles fell asleep in the car, exhausted from the day's adventures. When we got home, Noah carried him to bed and I tucked him in, kissing his forehead. That night, as Noah and I sat together on the couch, I felt a sense of peace. The road ahead was still uncertain, but moments like these reminded me of what truly mattered. "We'll get through this, Noah," I said, leaning against him. "One step at a time." He nodded, his arm around me. Together. As we sat there, the love and determination in our hearts gave me hope. We had a long journey ahead, but with our love and the bond we shared as a family, I knew we could face whatever challenges lay ahead. The days rolled by, and we fell into a routine that masked the tension lying just beneath the surface. On the outside, it appeared that life was continuing as normal. We still had dinners together, helped Charles with his school projects, and kept up with our social engagements. But behind closed doors, Noah and I were constantly grappling with the uncertainty and pain of the DNA test results. It was a Saturday morning when Noah received a text from his boss about a company barbecue. "Hey, Amelia," he called from the living room. "My boss is hosting a barbecue this afternoon. They invited all the families from work." I walked in, wiping my hands on a dish towel. "Do you want to go?" He shrugged, looking conflicted. "I think it might be good for us to get out. We've been cooped up here for too long, and besides, Charles would love it." I nodded. "You're right. Let's go. It'll be good to get some fresh air and socialize." Charles, overhearing our conversation, ran in excitedly. "Are we going to a barbecue? Can I play with other kids?" "Yes, we are," Noah said, ruffling his hair. "Go get ready." The barbecue was held at a large park near Noah's office. The smell of grilling meat and the sound of laughter greeted us as we arrived. Colleagues and their families were scattered across the park, mingling and playing games. It seemed like the perfect opportunity to escape our troubles, if only for a few hours. We were greeted warmly by Noah's boss, Mr. Reynolds. "Noah." "Amelia, great to see you both. And this must be Charles." Charles beamed up at him. "Hi, Mr. Reynolds." "Go on and play, Charles," I said, watching as he ran off to join a group of kids playing soccer. Noah and I tried to relax and blend in, but I could sense the underlying tension in his posture. We chatted with his colleagues, making small talk and laughing at jokes. It felt almost normal, but I knew it was just a facade. At one point, I found myself standing alone near the drink table, trying to compose myself. Noah's co-worker, Lisa, walked over, a friendly smile on her face. "Hey Amelia, how are you holding up?" I forced a smile. "Oh, just taking it one day at a time." Lisa nodded, her expression understanding. "I heard about what happened. I'm so sorry you're going through this. If you ever need someone to talk to, I'm here." "Thank you," I said, feeling a lump in my throat. That means a lot. As the afternoon wore on, Noah and I continued to put on a brave face, participating in the games and conversations. Charles was having a blast, and seeing him so happy made it easier to keep up the pretense. At one point, Benjamin showed up, surprising us. He worked in the same industry and often attended these events. "Hey, you too," he greeted, giving us a knowing look. "How's it going?" I sighed, glancing around to make sure Charles was still occupied. "It's been tough, Ben. But we're managing." Noah nodded. "Yeah, we're just trying to keep things normal for Charles." Benjamin looked thoughtful. "I get it. Just remember, it's okay to lean on your friends. You don't have to go through this alone." As the sun began to set, the barbecue started to wind down. People began to pack up, saying their goodbyes and making plans for the next company event. Noah and I helped clean up, wanting to show our appreciation for the invitation. On the drive home, Charles chatted excitedly about all the new friends he had made and the games he had played. Noah and I exchanged tired but content smiles, glad that we had given him a fun day. That night, after putting Charles to bed, Noah and I sat on the couch, the facade we had maintained all day slowly crumbling. We were exhausted, both physically and emotionally. "I think today was good for us," Noah said, breaking the silence, "even if it was hard." I nodded, leaning against him. It was. We need to keep living our lives, even when things are tough. Noah wrapped his arm around me, his voice soft. "We're going to get through this, Amelia. One step at a time, like you always say." I smiled, feeling a glimmer of hope. "Yes, we will. Together." As we sat there, the weight of our struggles didn't seem as heavy. We had managed to find moments of joy and normalcy, even in the midst of our turmoil. It was a reminder that, despite everything, we still had each other and the strength to face whatever lay ahead. A few months had passed since that fateful barbecue. Our lives had settled into a new kind of normal, one that balanced the ongoing challenges of our situation with the everyday joys and routines that kept us grounded. The uncertainty of Charles's parentage still hung over us, but we had found a way to move forward together. We had followed Benjamin's advice and hired a lawyer who had been diligently working to uncover the truth behind the mix-up at the clinic. It was a slow and often frustrating process, but having a plan and someone advocating for us provided a sense of control and hope. One crisp autumn afternoon, Noah and I were sitting in the kitchen, sipping coffee and watching the leaves fall outside. Charles was at school, and the house was unusually quiet. The phone rang, breaking the silence. I answered, my heart skipping a beat when I heard our lawyer's voice on the other end. "Amelia, I have some news," she said, her tone serious but kind. "We've discovered what happened. There was indeed a mix-up at the clinic. Another couple's sample was mistakenly used during your IVF procedure." I felt a rush of emotions: relief, anger, sadness, and a strange sense of closure. "Thank you for letting us know," I said, my voice trembling. "What does this mean for us now?" "The other couple has been informed as well," she continued. "They are as shocked as you are, but they have no intention of pursuing any legal action or custody. They understand that Charles is your son, and they respect that." I glanced at Noah, who was watching me intently, trying to read my expression. "Thank you," I repeated, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. "This helps us a lot. We can finally start to move forward." After hanging up, I turned to Noah. They found out what happened. It was a mix-up at the clinic. Another couple's sample was used by mistake. Noah closed his eyes, taking a deep breath. "So, that's it? We know now." I nodded, tears welling up in my eyes. "Yes, and the other couple isn't going to pursue anything. Charles is our son, Noah, legally, emotionally, in every way that matters." He pulled me into his arms, and we held each other tightly, letting the relief wash over us. "We can finally put this behind us," he whispered. "We can move forward." That evening we sat down with Charles after dinner. We had decided to explain things to him in a way he could understand, knowing that honesty was important, even if the full complexity was beyond his grasp. "Charles, we need to talk to you about something important," Noah began, his voice gentle. Charles looked up, his eyes wide with curiosity. "What is it, Daddy?" I took a deep breath, choosing my words carefully. "You know how special you are to us, right? How much we love you." He nodded, still looking a bit confused. "Yeah, I know." "Well," Noah continued, "when you were born, there was a mistake at the place where Mummy and Daddy went to get help to have you. But it doesn't change how much we love you or how much you mean to us." Charles frowned, trying to process the information. "So I'm still your son, right?" "Absolutely," I said firmly, taking his small hand in mine. "You are our son, and nothing will ever change that. We love you so much, and we always will." He seemed to accept this, nodding slowly. "Okay, can I go play now?" We laughed, the tension breaking as we realized how resilient and adaptable children could be. "Yes, go play," Noah said, ruffling his hair. "We just wanted you to know that you are very special to us." As Charles ran off to his room, I looked at Noah, feeling a profound sense of gratitude. "We did it," I said softly. "We made it through." He nodded, his eyes shining with emotion. "We did, and we're stronger for it." Over the next few weeks, we focused on rebuilding our lives with a renewed sense of purpose and love. The experience had tested us in ways we never imagined, but it had also brought us closer together. We had faced our fears, confronted our doubts, and emerged stronger on the other side. One evening, as we were sitting on the porch watching the sunset, Noah turned to me, his expression thoughtful. "You know, Amelia, this whole ordeal has taught me something important." "What's that?" I asked, curious. "No matter what life throws at us, as long as we face it together, we can overcome anything," he said, squeezing my hand. "You are my rock, and I'm so grateful for you." I smiled, feeling tears of joy in my eyes. "And you are mine, Noah. We've been through so much, but we've come out stronger because of it." As the sun dipped below the horizon, we sat in comfortable silence, reflecting on our journey. The road had been long and difficult, but we had navigated it together, with love and determination. In the end, it was our unwavering love for each other and for Charles that had guided us through the darkest of times. We had faced the storm and emerged victorious, stronger and more united than ever before. Amelia's story is a testament to the power of resilience, the strength of family, and the unbreakable bonds of love. Despite the challenges and uncertainties, we found a way to move forward hand in hand, hearts united, ready to face whatever the future holds. Let us know in the comments how this story has inspired you, or share your own experiences of overcoming adversity. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more heart-touching stories like this one. Hit the bell icon to stay updated with our latest uploads. Your journey through the complexities of the human heart starts now. Remember, your story isn't over yet. It's just a new chapter beginning. Stay strong, stay inspired.